and welcome to SOS Stories of Survivors. I'm your host, Serina Dansker, and today it is my absolute pleasure to welcome the extraordinary Christine Dorsey. Hi,
I'm so
Christine.
happy to be here.
What a great day. We've had some technical difficulties, but you know what? Life goes on and we figure it out.
That's right.
And so we're going to talk about Christine's story, who, oh my gosh, it started when she was just 5 years old. She was in a near death experience and she caught a glimpse of the beauty and the power and the magic on the other side of the veil. And that moment planted seeds that sent her on a journey that she's now been embarking on, and she's going to tell us all about it today. She's a Reiki master, energy therapist, meditation teacher. She is so amazing, and I can't wait to hear about it. So, before we dive into your journey, Christine,
Yes.
describe what you do today, and just not what you do, but who you are.
Who I am. Well, I'm married with three wonderful grown children. I live in the Hudson Valley, New York, which is a beautiful area of New York. I live about literally 1.5 miles from the Hudson River. It's so beautiful. Yeah, I know. Gorgeous. Um, I have five dogs. We just lost a dog, Tigger, last month, but we love animals, so we have a lot of dogs. I actually, between my husband and I, we own three businesses. So we're also here to kind of like pave our own way and help people in our own way. And I am here to serve the collective, really. And so that's my mission is how can I help? And it's constantly evolving, constantly transforming. It's never it's never a dull moment when you're in this industry. I forget the industry, but live this life. When you live this life, it's
It's a
never a dull
journey,
moment.
right? It's a journey.
Oh yeah, it is a journey for sure. Absolutely. Yes.
You never
Yeah.
know what's going to happen, but you have this special, glimpse and glimmer, and I'm so excited. So I'm gonna start you off and dive right into your story, beginning with your experience when you
Yes.
were 5. Tell me,
Okay.
tell me.
All right. So at the time I was in kindergarten and I came home. We lived in Queens, Mass with Queens. I came home um, stomach ache the whole next day. That night, my parents took me to the ER. And I remember so much. Like I just have such a vivid memory of the whole thing. Went to the ER. They said it was the flu. Came home. They gave me some medicine and I threw it up. By the next morning, which was Sunday morning, I actually woke up screaming in pain. My parents grabbed me, put me in the Volkswagen Bug they had. We're talking 76 this year. It was like 70s, 1976,
Wow.
and wrapped me in the Afghan and took me to Elmhurst General. Um, we went in there, and I remember my dad screaming. He was upset. My mom dealing with the nurses, but I remember going on a gurney, and I remember going into an elevator, and a man was looking down at me, and I remember him saying that everything was going to be okay. When I reflect back on his accent, which was interesting, it had like Middle Eastern Israeli kind of a tone to it, not knowing because I was 5, what would I know, about that? But I remember so much. And I remember the tone of his voice was so calming. It was almost like I knew I was going to be okay.
Wow.
Now, at that point, I ended up in surgery because what happened was I had a ruptured appendix that went septic. So I was totality in the hospital for 17 days, in ICU for 12.
At 5 years
Intubated.
old.
That's
Oh,
right.
funny.
Yep. And I do have some good friends who are doctors who said, they'd rather get a gunshot wound than that in a child because,
Ah,
you're basically at the mercy of what's going to be. So what I recall from my experience was I don't remember the tunnel. I don't recall that. I just remember being there. And so
so
I
describe
rem
it. What was, yeah,
yeah,
what
so
was your life?
when I looked, I just saw a field of tulips, like every color. And the interesting thing was it's almost like they had this vibration of song. I don't even, it's like the shade of the color I've never seen being alive here. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like
me too. It's
it's so
super
crisp and
vibrant.
vivid.
Yes.
They were very tall because I was small. I remember that it was sort of a rolling hill down in front of me, and there was a path, like a dirt path. And I didn't have shoes on, but that was okay. I wasn't cold. I wasn't scared. I do remember the sun was off to the left, and it's to me what I consider the perfect sunset. It's sort of that, um, 4 or 5 o'clock like glow, but it's
Oh,
not too
yeah.
hot. That's that
Oh,
beautiful warm, but
I-
not too warm. And that was off to the left. And I noticed there was a man in front of me, but what I was looking at was the back of him. So I saw this man, and he had on a very kind of like a white sort of like garment. It, looked like with a hemp belt. It looked like a robe and a bad haircut. I thought, oh, his mommy gave him a bad haircut, right? Because I mean, I was 5. I was
Did you
like,
have any smells? Did you get anything from
I
like
didn't.
scents that you
I
remember?
don't recall any smells, which is interesting. And also, I'd have to say, I wasn't familiar with tulips. My mom had a rose garden. So
Okay.
this flower it was like, ooh, it was so beautiful, but I had never really seen one. Not in my daily life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Living
So
in the city.
exactly, living in Queens, not going to come across many tulips. So we walked together, and I walked behind him, and I just knew it was okay to follow him. And I remember walking, looking at my feet, looking at the ground, watching him walk. I knew it was safe. I knew everything was as it should be. I just kept following him. And
Wow.
eventually we came to this point with this very large tree. And it looked like I say it's the perfect tree that when you climb as a kid,
Mm.
like just every branch was healthy, it was full. And I looked up, and we stood in front of the tree. And then he had this book, and it was a very thick book. And I noticed that the cover was like bendable, like fabric. And
Interesting.
now back then, if in kindergarten, if you remember, it's those hard books.
Yeah.
It's like, they were like
The
you could hit
textbook.
somebody in the
Yes.
head. They were the little ones, the reading books, right? So that was the only thing I could remember. So I've never seen such a thick book and like bendable. And I remember he sort of flipped the pages a little, so it made like a little fan, on my face.
Sure.
And I giggled, and
Of
he
course.
said, "You two will know this book one day." And I said, I just smiled and laughed, and I thought, okay, you know. And then the next thing I remember was holding his hand, and we walked over to like, it looked like a little brook of water, And the thing about the rocks that I remember is like, when a really well-worn rock is just super round, no jagged edges.
So there's like the path leading to the water. Was that what the
Yeah, the path you could walk over to the water, and along the edge of the water were these rocks that were sort of along the edge, and some rocks in the water, and they were super round, very smooth. I remember that.
like
And
river rocks, maybe?
yeah, that's what it and again, I lived in Queens, so
Yeah.
I did not have a river, right? I was
Yeah, yeah, no,
not.
exactly.
Yeah, so and that is what I remember. That experience there is what I remember. So after that, the next thing I remember was waking up in my hospital room, intubated.
Did he tell you his name or anything, the guy?
He didn't, but I did find out more
Okay, so I'm sorry.
after the fact.
I
I
want
know.
I'm
I
so
did.
excited.
I know. So like I said, I was in the hospital for a very long time.
Right.
And when I came home, it was right before my kindergarten graduation.
Oh,
And I was miserable. I was depressed. I didn't want to be here. I remember being scared, 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 scared. And if you would have asked me why, I couldn't have pinpointed. But I believe upon like some reflection, it's that everything was so safe and perfect where I was. And now I was here and I was vulnerable.
I see.
Yeah. And I knew that part of it. It's funny because
Even though when you're with your parents, I mean, you're in a safe place, but
but I wasn't like happy. And it's interesting is that when they took my kindergarten picture, I remember the woman saying, why don't you smile? What 5-year-old doesn't smile? And what you got out of my kindergarten picture was about the best there was. It was like barely a smile. It was me there with the
Lady.
cap and gown. Yeah, lady, let's get this going. This is all I got. This is the best. Um, and then, oh, so then we had the summer, and I just remember sort of like unwinding myself at home, sort of emotionally, because then I just remember going back to first grade and just
Your
almost like
parents
forgetting about
just,
it.
let me just back you up a little. So, you come out, your parents are
Yeah.
thrilled, you're okay,
Yes.
healing. And I'm sure, even back then, I know our parents let us, run around free and weren't helicopter parents like they are today.
Yeah.
But, they still, oh, were you feeling okay? Did they notice anything was different about you? Do you recall any like concern, like whispers, from the
I
parents?
don't remember any of that, but I do remember not wanting to go out and play. The first definite 2 weeks, I remember my best friend coming over. I remember this. And she asked me to come out and play, and I said no. And then she kept asking, and I kept saying no. I do remember that.
She
And
knew something was up.
yeah, she's like, what happened to my friend?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you go through the summer and you go and you just, no camp, no.
No, back to, I lived in a neighborhood in Queens, so there was always a lot of kids around.
Right, right.
And then I sort of assimilated back into life
Okay, good.
and really like stored it in the back of my mind to be, dealt with later in life. I just put it in the mental filing cabinet, as I like to say.
You didn't talk about it to anybody.
No, who talked about things in
Well,
this?
you know
Just,
what? You're right. This is why we're all doing this show. Because
no.
now we're finally talking about.
I know. I mean, no one talked about it. I mean, I can tell you that subsequent years, I was having nightmares every night, probably until I would say I was about 9 or 10. And I always ended up in my parents' bed, which I realized what was happening was that I had tapped into the other side, and the other side was trying to tap into me.
Oh, and you didn't know how to protect yourself at all.
No.
Because yeah, I mean, who talked about that and who knew that
No.
you could do? Wow.
So I pretty much spent every night after that in my parents' bed, making my way, crying, making my way down the hall and into the bed.
And your parents
And
thought night frights probably from
yeah,
a child.
I, again, nobody,
Yeah.
nobody put two and two together.
Oh,
And even when it's funny, because even when I was older, just to talk about like no transparency, I remember asking my mom, I said, did they ever say anything to you when I was in the hospital during surgery? Did they talk about it?
right.
She's like, no, nobody said anything. And I was like, that's the 70s for you. I was like, no, no transparency. I just, anyway, so I jumped ahead, but I just wanted to
That's
just,
no, but that's really interesting because your life, your child, did well in school, somewhere as well as you could, with everything going on and all
yeah,
of those, you know, all of those memories trying to resurface during your sleep and so um when you started to those dreams stopped, you said when you were like 9 or 10,
yep.
what was going on in your life that you think that it stopped and
Well, what happened was we moved out of the city and we moved upstate,
oh,
right, to the Hudson Valley.
okay,
So everything just kind of like shifted, and
right.
I was more focused on sort of like, what was happening in the physical, like, going into a new school and making new friends in a new house. And then I hit those tween years.
Mm.
And then, as we know, things start to fade and dissipate until it's time to come back. And in my experience, I can say that's how it happened. So I was consumed with, again, meeting new friends, the boy in the hallway, blah, 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 like being in
Important
school,
things,
important things.
important things as middle school should be.
That's right. And so that got buried, that into the teenage years, high school years, that was like lock and key down someplace. Then now the thing is, I always had a very good intuition. I always could feel, I would feel funny about some things or funny about some people. That never went away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we all have that, but you probably had it more because of your experience.
Yeah, it
You don't
could
always
be.
listen to it.
Ain't that the truth? No, no, I am now that I'm getting older. It only took
Well,
like,
it
so
only
many
took
years.
so many years.
It only took this long to get there. But yeah, no,
I'm
it's
sorry. Let me keep you on track here. We're having so much fun.
I know.
Okay, so yeah, so you're in your teen years and you've suppressed a lot of those memories
Yeah,
there. Although they were good memories, but you've kept them down and now you're living your life and
yeah.
you have that intuition, which you were gonna tell us how that played out.
Well, what's interesting is I was in my 20s and my sister-in-law at the time was practicing Reiki and no one talked about Reiki. I never heard of it. Nobody really knew about it.
Oh,
But she said, "Oh, I'm going to do this thing." They lived in Massachusetts, so they came down to New York and they visited. So she did Reiki on me. And what's interesting is that I was seeing these images that as she was working on me. And when we were done, she says to me, tells me these images that she's seeing, they were the same images I was seeing.
what?
I know. And that's, yeah, see, it's that where I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, nobody, remember that I have no guidebook. I have nobody telling me like, oh, these things could happen. Like this is your psychic and, intuition really blossoming. Like this is a blossoming, excuse me. It's coming, to fruition. It's coming to the surface. It's trying to come to the surface.
Now, have you had any glimmers of this prior to that, where you'd get little bits, or
You,
not voices, but you know what I'm saying? Like, grandma.
not, yeah, not really. I mean, no, I can't say to that. That was really like
Yeah, that's
that stuck out in my
I've
head.
had I've like my dog, my childhood dog had been gone for like 10 years, and I get in my car and I smelled that dog, and I'm like, Chestnut? And I'm like, I was
Oh, what a
just
great
like,
name too.
Yeah,
I love
I was
that
just
name.
like, it felt like he was there. And I didn't connect it at the time that, I was, however, young and foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't making the connection, but now I think back and he was coming to visit,
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
just
my
wondering if
gosh.
you've had any like little,
So at that time, that was kind of what I started to, that was sort of like busted me open a little bit, right? And then I had a lot of interest
like,
in Doreen Virtue before she went a little crazy. I had a lot of interest in angels. I had a lot of interest in crystals. I was just starting to tap in and just be really sort of
or,
explorative
yeah,
in that world and just really embrace it because I always felt spiritual. I never felt religious.
right.
And I
What religion were
I
you raised? I'm just
I
curious.
was raised Roman Catholic, but
Me too.
that
I
didn't really
know. I wasn't a
last.
good Catholic girl.
Not a good Catholic girl. Yeah, I was not a yeah. And that's okay. That is
It's
okay.
okay. It's okay. I've come to terms with it, and my priest, he understands. I've gone to confessional.
Oh my goodness, you're funny. So I think then what ended up happening really when I really started to like rediscover it was I was in my 30s and I had gotten divorced from my first husband.
Okay.
And that was kind of the split of like, all right, this path is going this way and I am on this spiritual path. And I really started to focus more on attending like meditation groups, like practice manifestation, reading The Secret. Like, I was like, okay, I can help co-create. I can pray to my angels. I can call on them. I just started to do this. And I do remember this is kind of a funny story, but it was sort of like a proof in the pudding, I'd say. I remember I was meeting with the two attorneys meet together and this other attorney wasn't always so nice. But I had just sort of like prayed about it, meditated, and just sent the whole situation love. And so we went to the meeting, and the meeting actually went swimmingly. We walked out, and my attorney, after we had walked down the street, stopped and looked at me. He goes, "Never in my life has she ever been that nice."
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And I just looked at him. I went, "Oh, you know,
It's Universe.
gee, I was like, I was like, oh, okay. Like,
Good.
yeah, it was really a beautiful experience.
Wow.
And then I continued kind of focusing on, I would say, self-care and building up that self-love.
Yes.
That was really important.
Wow. You realize that at a much younger age than I did on the self-love path. It's so, so important to
It
do
is.
that. Now, when so now you're divorced and you're starting on your journey. Was spirit part of this yet, or have you tapped into those dreams at that point? Or not
So,
yet?
yeah. So, spirit was definitely part of the journey. I ended up getting a wonderful job with a company, an integrative medical device company, and they were very like energy and spiritually based. So I really learned a lot from them about emotions and how we hold emotions in the body, the importance of releasing emotions, the importance of being present. It was like my first real, like living foray into this world.
Wow.
Um, and I started to practice more meditation in addition. And I started a business at the time with, it was a small little weight loss business. And the idea was clients would come in. It really wasn't a long appointment, it was about 15 minutes. And we would talk about how the week went, if they had a loss or a gain or stayed the same. But what I ended up finding out was there was this healing happening every time somebody sat in the chair with me. It took me a long time because I'm not always aware to say, oh, it was me. But what started happening, that was me, I healed you. That, what they would say was,
The energy.
they would say, we're cracking ourselves up today. They would say, Christine, I always feel so much better when I come and see you. And I was like, oh, we talk about literally could have been something on with their partner, with their children, with work. And we'd unravel it in like 15 minutes. And God forbid one of my kids had a soccer game or a football game, and I had somebody come in and like work for me, they would be so upset. And
Oh,
I was like, ooh, that's something. Like, that's really when I was like, wow, there's something happening here. There's an exchange that's happening here that I need to pay attention to.
wow.
And I did that for many, many years. So I would say about 8 years. And then I transitioned it more to like integrative nutrition. So looking at the whole lifestyle, the whole body, like everything that we're doing. And I really love the components of like, how are your relationships? How's your spirituality? Can you do meditation? It was wonderful. And I was again, like I'm telling you, this was the slow boat to get there because it took, now at this point, I'm in my 40s. Nothing happened overnight.
No, no. And sometimes we're not one brick kids. You don't get hit with the brick and say, oh, let me move out from under the building. It's got to be
Yeah.
with it a few times where you say, oh, I should be over there on this path.
That's right.
And
And it's interesting because then I had moved into a bigger office. I started to offer these wonderful workshops with spiritual people. I literally purchased the most beautiful sign. I put it up and COVID hit.
oh, no.
Right? Again, everything happens for a reason. So now I'm just doing remote work. But then what that really did was it pushed me inward more to tap into what I really needed to tap into. And I found some of the best teachers, traveled an hour and a half into Connecticut, an hour and a half into Jersey. I became a Reiki master, advanced integrated energy
Wow.
therapy, learned tarot, drove to Connecticut for that, became a meditation teacher, drove to Connecticut for that. I really, for me, I can say I found the best people, the best, because I knew I needed certain people. I knew that what we were going to bust open here needed to be done correctly. And I just felt very, very intuitively and spiritually guided to
Wow.
find these people. Yeah.
And that's true. You don't realize that when you open yourself up to receive,
Yeah.
comes at you. And just so you know, I'm, not tooting my own horn, but I did do tarot cards when I was in college for years. We used to try and figure out our fortunes, me and the girls would get together.
Good for you.
Listen, I was so excited for this interview, as you could tell. I was just so let's I digress. Okay, so you've said self-love is at the heart of your healing,
Yeah.
and how did you come to understand that, and can you describe what that felt like for you, the journey there?
So, so there's one key piece that I'm gonna
Good.
dive into right now because the question was always, who was it I saw?
Oh, yes.
Right. And I, at this point, at this juncture, I am deep in. I
Mhm.
want to know. I'm engulfed. It's coming out. I have detail, I'm there. it's raw. Well, I went and I had a reading with somebody we both know who's a very good medium slash psychic.
Yes.
And I decided I would tell part of the story to see if she could finish the story because I knew it wasn't Christ. I knew it wasn't him, but I didn't know who it was. And I did remember his face. And I remember he had green eyes like me. And I remember he had a chin like me, believe it or not, with a dimple. And
Oh,
I remember like just looking at his face. I just
but that's what
remember
a
that.
5-year-old would remember, the similarities.
Yes, yes. And so it was John.
What? The
Yeah,
fastest. Oh my gosh.
and let me tell you something. We're talking basic, simple. When I tell you like just a robe and a belt and barefoot, like this is what I saw and experienced, and like kindness.
Wow.
And
So when she told
I
you that, it resonated. You knew.
I knew it was that.
Yes.
So
Isn't that
then on
crazy?
the heels of this, like around Christmas, I would like to I'd go into the city with my kids. So
Right.
we'd go down Fifth Avenue and then we'd make the trek into like St. Patrick's Cathedral just because it's very nice, light a candle, all that.
Yes.
Well, this year, why I have no idea, we went into St. Pat's and it wasn't crowded. When in the history of ever before Christmas have you ever gone and it's never crowded?
Never.
Never. To the point where we actually sat down in the pew and we just sat and just like kind of just hung out for a minute. And then we kind of looked around. I'm like, wow, look at these Stations of the Cross. They're kind of beautiful. Like, let's walk around. So we walk all the way around. We get behind the altar. I never saw the shrine to Mary before. That was stunning.
Mm.
So we're staring at this. It's very quiet. And then I look over and there's this one statue by itself right there. No one's there. We
Mm.
walk over and it was the statue of Elizabeth, Mary's cousin. I have goosebumps. And it's the story of how Gabriel came to Elizabeth and told her that she would have a son that would baptize, you know, the Christ.
Right, straight.
Yeah. And so I got goosebumps throughout my entire body. Like I feel like now I can feel like I can feel it now talking to you. Like it's just, I was like, oh my God, I think I had tears in my eyes. I knew, I knew, I knew, I knew. Okay, this is it. And I have to say, if you think about the story of John was there for Christ, right? This is not religious. This is not religious. This is about the spirit of this man who gave everything for the greater good, for the collective.
Yes.
Um, he was there to be of service to the collective.
Yes.
Of course, this would be the person that I would meet, and he would, I would say, assist me in sort of planting these seeds that would then blossom later in life.
Mm.
And the tulip
Yeah, I was just
means
going to ask you, so what's the meaning of the tulips?
it's like perfection, love, perfection. Of course,
Of course, yeah. And
right? Like, of course it would be that. It's really like you can't even make it, all of the things, right? So it's just amazing. Anyway, so if I'm just going to fast forward just a little bit. So now I find out, now I'm really holding that in my heart. I have these gifts
yeah.
and I say this. If when somebody talks to me, I say, yes, I'm attuned to the Reiki symbols. Yes, I have integrative energy therapy and I work with the healing angels, and I do. But when I'm working with clients, what ends up happening is I'm calling in Christ, I'm calling in Raphael, I'm calling in the angels, I'm calling in guides, ascended masters, And we're sending in unconditional love to the body because when the body is loved, it's absolutely perfect.
Now, what would you say to someone who's a little bit skeptical about that,
I,
about the
yeah,
and the
I
healing?
would say, come try it.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say sit in front of me and see. And because, and that, it took me a long time because have a rising Virgo, and Virgo wants to not talk about what
Mm,
I do, wants to talk about other things, right? It can tamp down the ego, which is good, but also like, I'm here to help, right?
right.
And so the feedback that I've gotten from clients, and sometimes I don't even, I say, like, I don't even know how it happens. It's like I just become this conduit for spirit, and spirit does what, who says spirit does what it wants, and every session is different.
Can
And
you tell us, like, without, names or anything like that, like maybe one little.
sure, I'll tell you. So, kids, phenomenal. I've done work with many children because they are very receptive. I've actually gone down to South Jersey and I've worked in like with special ed kids who have, I would say a lot of different like digestive issues and, with some other things that are going on. And I've done full days down in the clinic with them. And I will always get a text message from mom saying, oh my God, they sat for whatever studies they needed to sit for. They actually went to the bathroom. Their bowel movement was good. They were much more calm and relaxed. And these are big things for these kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Wow.
had a teenager last year. I do adults too. We'll go, but I had a teenager last year. Mom was concerned because the teenager was kind of, you're in that awkward stage in the teenager years. I just did 30 minutes with this young man. We talked about, so part of the other gifts that I have when I'm doing this work is I get intuitive images into the body where they're holding their
Mm,
stress, where the energy blocks are, and the stories around it. So it could be, you're holding energy, in your shoulder because there's something going on with your dad and you're feeling burdened, like whatever that might be. I
right.
will see a story. Sometimes loved ones will come through because of the mediumship gifts that I have, and we will share that as long as it's in a healing, setting.
Wow.
Um, so anyway, long story short, and he was very skeptical. The best you could tell was that he fell asleep and relaxed. That's great. But by the time we were done, and then when he was on his way out the door, I said, also, you ghost everybody who tries to text message you. He looked at me, his eyes popped open, walked out that door. He never ghosted another person again.
I love that. Oh my God, that's amazing.
So like that's a little, and then I have like many, adults who will come, whether it be chronic issues that they have or anxiety. And sometimes we need to peel away those layers of what's going on to get to the heart, and I always say, you know, it didn't take, you didn't get here overnight. So we're not going to cure it overnight, but each healing session, you're going to see a difference.
That,
Um,
yeah, I mean, so your story is just, it's not just about survival but it's about transforming and how
yeah.
you see yourself as both, you're a survivor of a near-death experience, but also you're a guide for others. And what would you say one of the biggest lessons from this journey has taught you about your resilience, in both body, mind, and spirit?
Um, Everybody's special, everybody's really, really special. We've all come in, we've all come in with a soul contract.
Yeah.
Know thyself. I
Mhm.
always say, know thyself. And that means learn about yourself in different ways than you have before. Learn about your energetic field. Learn about your astrology. Learn about how you react versus respond. Learn about what triggers you. Learn about your old patterns that you get stuck in that repeat and then cause dis-ease. You
Mhm.
know, that is your ticket. It is a journey and it's not always going to be easy. And
No.
and in my feeling, you knew it wasn't going to be easy because you agreed to it. You knew you needed to learn some lessons. Had to work through some karma. But I always say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to raise an adult.
It does.
Find the right people to help and support you as you're learning about yourself so that you can be your best self moving forward.
That's so beautifully said. I was going to ask you, what would you tell someone who feels disconnected or broken, or what would you say from your heart? And you already summed it up right there. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I know when I had my tragedy hit, I was broken, and
Yeah.
I too went to a healer because
Yeah.
I needed to be fixed or just mended, healed as best as
Hmm.
I can. And I will tell you, I used to do it every week, sometimes twice a week for months. And it's what saved me, really and truly. I mean, I applaud you and
Wow.
abilities. So talk to me. Tell me where you feel your path is leading you now in your personal life, your clinic, your spiritual practice.
Yeah. So this is so interesting. Again, on the heels of transformation, so something I did for myself was really dedicate myself to my psychic and mediumship gifts. And I started working with a mentor one-on-one. She's very accomplished. She's studied at the Arthur Findlay College in Britain. She's a good fit for me. We've identified so much more in my gifts again because my rising Virgo wants to be like, oh my God, it just happens. It just happens. We peeled away those layers. We created some formats.
Oh,
And they're, just been doing a lot of psychic readings, a lot of mediumship readings. And I've added that to what I do. But the most surprising thing was that when my beloved Tigger passed away, which he did, and if anybody has a pet, he passed away peacefully. I was actually on a Zoom call. I had 528 hertz music going on in the living room. He stepped off the couch, laid on the rug, his little Yorkie Maltese mix, and passed away. So may we all pass that peacefully. But of course, it was very sad for me.
yeah, yeah.
When and we all were in my family were sad. When I sat with spirit and talked to God and talked to Tigger, and I could feel his presence around me. And I just said to him, do you want to help me? And I was like, why did I say that? I just thought, why did I say that? That's weird. Like you say it, but you don't know why you're
Yeah,
saying it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the following week, my mentor, her dog was very sick, and I started to get intuitive insight, explanations, what was going on, what happened. I messaged her and I said, would you mind if I did some, distance energy work? I've never worked on animals before that because it just never entered into my mind to try it. Long story short, she was able to leave the next morning on vacation and she was blown away. It ended up getting through to some other classmates, and then I worked on somebody else's dog who was not recovering from surgery.
Oh,
I tapped into what was happening, worked on him 3 different times. She sent me a video this morning. I'm in tears, Christine. He's running around. He's crazy as usual.
I love that.
I know. So, like, you just don't know. So, I'm like, you know what, Spirit, this is great. I love animals
Yeah.
and people. And the way I say, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a healer of living things, whether you are a person, whether you're an animal, that's my purpose. And I want to circle back to something that's interesting is that remember when I said, isn't it, of course, it makes sense that John would be the one to come to me because he gave his life really for the collective, right?
Yes.
In my astrological chart, my North Node, which is your purpose in life, is in Aquarius, and I am here to serve the collective.
Oh, how funny is that?
Can't make that up,
No. Wow.
right?
That's crazy.
I know.
Oh my God. So
I
it
know.
all comes full. I mean, I believe more than ever, there's no coincidences. Really,
Yeah.
all of this stuff, and everything that happens and the energy that surrounds us and the people you meet, you're meant to meet.
Yeah. And I've met some fabulous people. I would say definitely like the last 5 years, especially, my circle's gotten much smaller. Last 2 years, smaller. And it's like this, but I really adore and value these people because they vibrate high and they keep their energy clear and clean. And
And
That's
that,
what I love.
and that's
Yeah,
not everyone is meant to be in our lives forever, but
that's right.
there are some that are, and
Yeah.
those are the ones that you hold close. As a friend of mine calls them, your wingmen. Those
Yes.
wingmen.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah,
Think of
for
them as your
sure.
angels, or
Yeah.
however you define your wingmen. But yeah, I totally get that. All right, so I would be really remiss if I don't ask you. Well, a couple of I'm going to do a little 5 minute or a couple of minute question lightning round. Um,
Okay.
what's one ritual you never skip?
Okay. In the morning, in my notes, I have like three prayers that Lorna Byrne puts out in her email blast. And I just love Lorna. She's so lovely. So these prayers are just small and they're beautiful. I do that. And I do personally, I say the Hail Mary and Our Father multiple times a day just because I do. And I will say that.
How about a book or teacher that changed your life?
I love the book, The Energy Cure. I can't remember the author offhand, but you can find it on Amazon.
Yeah,
But it's really wonderful
cool.
because it talks about energy. Yeah. Yeah. I love that
Awesome.
book.
Okay. And if you could whisper something to your 5-year-old self after that experience, what would you say?
I would say, don't be so afraid. It's going to be okay.
You're gonna make me cry.
Aww.
I love that. It's just,
Yeah.
and that's part of healing. And with that, finish the sentence. Healing is
Love.
yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my God, I love that. Oh, you are
Aw.
such a light and a love, and I'm
Aw. Thank
just
you
so
so much.
glad we got to do this and talk. And I want you to tell our listeners
Yes.
how they can reach you.
Okay, sure. So my name is Christine Dorsey, Dorsey. My website is Heliotrope Holistic Healing. So heliotrope is a type of flower that follows the sun, like a sunflower is a heliotrope. It's a Greek word. Heliotropeholistic.healing.com. You can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I'm starting to get into TikTok. I'm trying.
You and me both. A little
Just
bit.
a little bit. You definitely can get me on Instagram. Probably that's the best way, or my website. But yes, that's the best way to reach me.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
I thank you again. And I end every show that I do with a poem from my son. He was the poet. That was the way he healed. And
Mm,
I try and choose one that kind of relates to our topic. And I think just being that it's Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, I kind of went with one of my poems that he wrote called The Background, because he was always in the background. And in life, there's always things going on in our background. So
yes. Yeah.
my glasses on to read this, but it says, I feel like the background to everyone's story. I lead them to success and glory, while I get left behind in a quarry. Most of my poems are allegories, but this one is just exemplary. I'm trying to show that even though many people know my name, I still feel like I'm behind a frame. Like it's like a board game, and my piece never gets played. I just sit there and watch as time goes tick tock, making my life become a writer's block. I am the utopia, which makes my entire existence a photocopy. So it's kind of, he's got a lot of emotion in that.
Yeah, he does.
And it's true of a lot of people who do need healing, and they need you, because they feel like they're not part of the universe or part of the world. They feel like they're almost cut off, or separate, or lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you are feeling that, or if our conversation has sparked any feelings, please dial 988. Suicide awareness, there are people out there that'll help you if you're feeling lonely. you're not alone. The world is such a better place with you in it. And Christine can help you and heal you and she's just fun. I've enjoyed this interview so much.
Me too. Oh, no, this was my pleasure. This was so much fun and enjoyable and authentic. And, you can energy is everything. And the energy is flowing so beautifully here. I love it. Thank you
I
so
love
much.
it too. Thank you, Christine, for being here. And to our listeners, please join us on sosradio.live, SOS Stories of Survivors, where survival sparks the soul. Thank you.